Hi everyone, this is Noah Sandler from Mtgo Academy, and today I'm going to be doing my set review for Kaladesh. We're going to be looking at the top 4 uncommons for every color, gold, and artifacts. I'm going to get started with white at number 4, Gearshift Ace. It's 1 and a white for 2/1 first strike. Whenever it crews a vehicle, that vehicle gains first strike until end of turn. So for its stats, 2/1 first strike for 2, that's a good rate. It's going to eat any servo that it comes in contact with and is a good power level for crewing vehicles, being 2 power on turn 2. Lets it crew the Renegade Freighter on turn 4, leaving your mana up. You're able to cast whatever else you want. But its ability is actually really powerful. None of the vehicles by themselves have first strike, and some vehicles benefit greatly from it. There's Oval Chase Dragster, the 6/1 Trample Haste. If you give that first strike, your opponent's just taking 6 damage every single turn, unless if they find a removal spell. And it also works really well with the Renegade Freighter, 5/4 Trample first strike, attacking on turn 4. Your opponent's going to need to draw a removal spell, or they're going to be dead pretty quickly. So for nice stats and some very powerful 2-card combos, it's going to be number 4 on the list. At number 3, Fairgrounds Warden. 2 and a white, 1/3. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Fairgrounds Warden leaves the battlefield. So this is like Banisher Priest in that until it leaves play, you get to remove your opponent's best creature. You do have to watch out if they are going to remove it during combat and then ambush you with a creature that you stole. Remember, there is a decent amount of instant speed removal in this set, a little more than usual. But what's also cool about it is that it does have 1 power, so while it's sitting there, normally Banisher Priest, you don't want to fight with it ever, because you don't want it to die, but the Fairgrounds Warden can crew a vehicle in the meantime, and keep it safe. At number 2, Sky Whaler's Shot. 2 and a white, instant, destroy target creature with power 3 or greater, scry 1. So at first glance, this might remind you of Smite the Monstrous, 3 and a white, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, or Humble the Brute for 5 mana, do the same thing and investigate. But there's a big difference between 4 power and 3 power. So, while Smite is something that you'd usually main deck, but you wouldn't want more than 1, and you'd side it out sometimes. Like, everybody's going to have 3 power creatures, and if you want to kill a creature, it's probably going to already have 3 power. And this is instant speed. It can hit vehicles. So unless your opponent's going really wide, you're going to find something good to hit with this. And it's splashable removal, plus you get the scry 1, which adds a good amount of value to the card. So given its splashability, is going to be one of the top uncommons in the set. At number 1, Aerial Responder. 1 and 2 white, 2/3 with flying, vigilance, and lifelink. So if this just flew, it would already be a really high pick. Just very solid at all stages of the game, but you add in the vigilance and lifelink, and it becomes a lot more powerful. So instead, you're draining for 2 every turn in the air, and your opponents can't really go wide against you because you can just block one of their smaller creatures, you kill their creature, and gain 2 life. So it's really hard for them to race you. They're going to have to race you with large creatures, or actually have a removal spell for the responder to actually beat you. You throw on the top that you can equip this or pump it, you gain even more life. It can become pretty broken. Moving on to blue. And yeah, kind of the same problems with the uncommons we have here at with the commons we have here at uncommons. They're just kind of doing different things. We're not really getting full value for the cards. They're maybe a little overcosted, a little slow. So yeah, not too excited about the blue uncommons in this set. But number 4, Longfin Sky Whale. 2 and 2 blue, 4/3 flying whale, can only block creatures with flying. Now, these are really good stats for an aggressive creature. Attacking for 4 power, flying, starting on turn 5, and it has enough toughness that it's just not getting pinged by anything, and it's hard to trade with in the air. This is a really nice finisher. The problem is that blue is just pretty slow in this format. This type of effect can only block creatures with flying, gets a lot weaker the longer the game goes on, the more controlling they have to be early, And so this card just doesn't have a lot of support in this set. If there were a lot more early cheap flyers and tempo bounce spells, this card would be a lot better, and I think in other sets this would be a really high pick. In here, it's something that you're going to play in some of your decks, but sometimes your deck's just going to be slow, wanting to stall the game out, develop energy, and you're just not going to have room for a more aggressive creature like Sky Whale. Number 3, Glimmer of Genius. 3 and a blue, instant, scry 2, then draw 2 cards, you get 2 energy. So this is a good deal. This was, Read the Bones was a sorcery speed where you lose 2 life for just 3 mana. So you're spending 1 more mana, you don't lose the 2 life, you get instant speed, and you get 2 energy. And that seems like a really fair deal. So this is a good card draw spell, and it also supports energy decks with energy production. The one problem I have with it here is that blue is already very slow and a bit overcosted in general in this set. So taking off your 4th turn just to draw some cards, I think you're going to get a little more punished than normal. You can have individually good slow cards, but when you put them all together, your deck's going to end up kind of clunky. But this is still one of the good ones. At number 2, Shrewd Negotiation. 4 and a blue, sorcery, exchange control of target artifact you control, and target artifact or creature you don't control. So this lets you mind control your opponent's best artifact or creature, so it hits vehicles, or you take their large creature, like a Gear Hulk, hopefully, and you just have to trade any of your artifacts. So the hope is it's a servo token or a puzzle knot, but even if you had to trade some artifact creature, maybe a 2/2 or a 2/4, as long as you're getting your bomb, you're still feeling like you're getting good value. So the more artifacts you have, the more fabricate cards, ways to get servos or thopters, the better this gets. But even if you only have 5 artifacts, I'd still play it just for the blowout potential. Your opponent plays a big bomb or a huge vehicle, you get to steal it. So it's still going to be worth it, but if you have enough artifacts, this card's value goes way up. And at number 1, Ether Meltdown. 1 a blue, aura, flash, enchant creature or vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Enchanted permanent gets -4, -0. So this is a really nice removal spell. You can check off the boxes. It's instant speed. It can work on vehicles. So your opponent crews a vehicle. You use Melt on it. And because it can enchant vehicles, it's not actually going to fall off at the end of turn. It also gets you energy. And because it gives -power, your opponent can't just use the creature you use it on to start crewing their other vehicles. So pretty much it neutralizes a threat on offense. Now, you're going to leave your opponent with possibly like a 0/4 creature in play. So you're going to have to try to win in some other way, either with flyers or some super energy production cards. But blue, I think, is built to do that in this set. So just very solid removal spell, though a bit disappointing considering the overall lack of power in blue's uncommons in this set. Moving on to black with number 4, Underhanded Designs. 1 a black enchantment. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can also pay 1 a black, sacrifice it, destroy a target creature, but you can only activate that ability if you control 2 or more artifacts. So starting with the second ability, if you have 2 or more artifacts, you pay 4 mana, and instant speed you can actually use the ability, so it can't hit vehicles. You get to destroy any creature, and that's a really great deal. I feel like black, it's not going to be that hard to get 2 artifacts in play. Some decks are going to be more artifact focused, and then this card's going to be insane. In others, you're just going to play a few fabricate creatures, a few artifacts here or there, and by the late game you'll have a spot where you get 2 in play and you can use this card. But the first ability, be able to drain your opponent for 1 mana every time you play an artifact, that's also very powerful. And again, if you're playing lots of artifacts, that's going to be potentially a legitimate win condition of just buying you more time. But with a life gain, more time you buy, you'll draw more cards, you'll play more artifacts, drain for more, and just get some pokes in here and there, and then eventually just kill your opponent's best creature. So if you have the artifacts, and I think a lot of black decks will, this card is very, very strong. At number 3, Oval Chase Daredevil. 3 and a black, a 4/2. whenever an artifact enters a battlefield under your control, you may return it from your graveyard to your hand. This card reminds me a lot of Accursed Witch and Haunted Dead, both really, really good uncommons in Shadows and Eldritch Moon, in that it's a 4-drop that your opponent doesn't really want to trade with, and it gives you a lot of advantage in the long game. So whenever you attack with this, remember your opponent doesn't know how many artifacts you have. So you could always have an artifact in your hand, even if you don't. So they're unlikely to want to trade with this card. So it's going to keep getting in for 4 damage for a while, and maybe they'll eventually have a couple servo tokens, or 2/2 they'll throw it in front. You play an artifact, get it back, play it again. Now they have to trade with it again. And it's just a card advantage engine over a long game. It just puts a lot of pressure and will run your opponent out of resources. At number 2, Aetherborn Marauder. 3 and a black, 2/2 flying lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, move any number of +1/+1 counters from other permanents you control onto Aetherborn Marauder. So base stats, 2/2 flying for 4. That's good for racing. It's a little bit fragile for a 4-drop having 2 toughness, but it just is great for racing. Your opponent's going to have to use a removal spell on it probably. But its ability, being able to move +1/+1 counters from other permanents you control onto it, this is the perfect spot for all those counters to go. Because you're getting flying and lifelink, so you're getting more value for those counters on this card than you're going to get anywhere else. You do want to be a little careful about putting all your eggs in one basket. I mean, if this is a 3/3 or a 4/4, that's probably big enough to win the game. It's just so hard to race a 4/4 flying lifelink. But there's plenty of fabricate cards. There's a lot of ways to get +1/+1 counters in this format, especially if you're black-green. So if you get this up to 4/4 fly or lifelink, you're going to win the game unless if your opponent has removal. And number 1, Essence Extraction. 1 and 2 black, instant. Essence Extraction deals 3 damage to target creature, and you gain 3 life. So 3 damage, gain 3 life. That's a great deal for 3 mana, and it's at instant speed, so you can hit vehicles. One cool thing is you can hit a Renegade Freighter in response to its trigger on the stack when it only has 3 toughness. That's going to be a huge blowout. So this card is great against red decks, aggro decks, just buy some time, kill something, and is just all in all a great card. Moving on to red, at number 4, we have Incendiary Sabotage. 2 and 2 red, instant. As initial cost to cast it, sacrifice an artifact. It deals 3 damage to each creature. So this effect is really, really powerful, and very commonly would be one of the best uncommons in the set. And it possibly might be here. I think there are a few reasons why it might not be. One, I mean, you do have to sacrifice an artifact to cast it, so that will limit the kind of decks you're going to play it in just a little bit. I mean, I think every deck is going to have at least a few artifacts, but you do need to draft some more artifacts, maybe a Puzzle Knot, or some Fabricate creatures to make this work. But the other thing is that red is generally very aggressive in this format, and I think you're going to be killing a lot of your own creatures. Where you have green with just these huge creatures, a bunch of them with 4 toughness, and this just isn't going to hit everything. But there are going to be some artifact-based, more controlling red decks, maybe red-blue with some energy stuff, and this card's going to be great in those decks. So it's very, very powerful. You're probably going to spend a high pick on it, but it also is a little bit narrow, and this might be a worse format for it than normal, because there are some very large creatures. At number 3, Brazen Scourge. 1 and 2 red, a 3/3 with haste. Very simple card, just smacks your opponent in the mouth. Turn 3, for red decks, you want to be aggressive. This just gets the damage in early and often, and eventually your opponent gets a bigger creature, you can't attack with it. It has 3 power, it's perfect to crew your vehicles. Number 2, Furious Reprisal, 3 and a red, sorcery, deals 2 damage to each of 2 target creatures and or players. So this is a really easy way to get a 2-for-1. At a minimum, you're probably going to hit a servo and another creature, so in that way you're kind of getting a 1-for-1. But it also hits players, you can get to kill your opponent if they're at 2 life. It doesn't deal with the larger threats in the format, doesn't stop vehicles, those large green creatures. So it's a little bit limited, but one card giving you a pretty easy 2-for-1, you're going to take that every time. And at number 1, Harness Lightning. 1 in a red, instant, choose target creature, you get 3 energy, then you may pay any amount of energy. Harness Lightning deals that much damage to that creature. So 2 mana, instant speed, deal 3 damage to target creature. Already amazing card, one of the best uncommons in the set. But this is a lot better than that. You get to spend excess energy to deal more damage, so this actually deals with 5 toughness, 6 toughness creatures. This can hit some of the largest vehicles. Or if you just need to kill a 1 toughness creature, you get to save 2 energy to use for other cards afterwards. So very flexible, very powerful. Is going to be one of the best uncommons in the set and also splashable. So pick it highly. And on to green. At number 4, Armorcraft Judge. 3 in a green, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So base stats 3/4. That's kind of unexciting in this format, but it is passable as a worst case scenario. But if you have 1 creature with +1/+1 counter on it, it's already very good. And once you have 2 or more, the card becomes insane. So the question is, how easy is it to get +1/+1 counters on your creatures? It's actually very easy, especially in green. There are a lot of cards at common that get +1/+1 counters themselves from Fabricate, or just put a +1/+1 counter on itself for another creature. And there's plenty of cards in other colors as well. So I think this is just going to be a really strong card. I think you're going to be drawing two cards off this a good amount of the time. At number 3, Servant of the Conduit. 1 in a green, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Tap it, pay an energy, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this is a 2 mana green creature that taps for a mana. Those have almost always been some of the top commons in the set. This one is uncommon, but it's actually a lot more powerful than what you usually get. You're only going to get 2 uses by itself, but it's a 2/2. And normally they're like 1/2s or 2/1s. And also you can add 1 mana of any color. So this can be used for fixing. And you could also use other energy to get more uses out of it, or use its energy to pump up your other energy cards. And green is very energy based, so I think that's going to be pretty common that you either use energy from this for something else, or you use other energy to add more mana out of this. And it's going to be a key card for any 3, 4, 5 color green deck. There's a good amount of fixing the format, and this is one of the better ones. Also worth noting that Ramp looks really good in this format, as there are some great 4 and 5 mana creatures in green that are very above the curve. So getting those out on turn 3 and 4 is going to give you a lot of wins. At number 2, Arborback Stomper. 3 and 2 green, 5/4 trample. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. So this card is going to crush aggro decks. Gaining 5 life, getting a big body that your opponent has to deal with is going to shut down any aggro deck. You play this even at 2 life, it can recover you. You can still win that game. And if your opponent's not aggro, it's a 5/4 trampler. 5 mana for 5/4 trampler is a pretty fine deal by itself. So even in matchups where the life gain isn't going to matter a lot, it's still a great attacker. You throw in the fact that you can flicker this or bounce it and gain even more life, really puts it through the roof. Very, very good card. And at number 1, Nature's Way. 1 in a green, sorcery. Target creature you control gains vigilance and trample until end of turn. Deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So this is a rabid bite effect, so it's not a fight. It just straight up deals the damage equal to its power to your opponent's creature. So 2 mana, rabid bite was one of the best commons from Shadows, and this is just an upgraded version of it. The vigilance and trample probably isn't making too big of an impact. It's not like it gives it lifelink or something, so it's not a ton better than rabid bite, but you'll take those bonus abilities. Sometimes they'll be relevant. But the green creatures in this format are very big, so just dealing their power to something is going to kill just about anything. Can't kill vehicles, and not instant speed. Also, again, there are more instant speed removal spells in this format, So this is one you want to wait until your opponent taps out for, but because it only costs 2 mana, you can play something else and play this in the same turn and give you a nice tempo play. Moving on to the gold cards. At number 4, Whirler Virtuoso. 1 a blue and a red for a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. You can pay 3 energy to create a 1/1 flying Thopter token. So you get a 2/3 and a 1/1 flyer. That's an artifact for 3 mana. That's an amazing deal. We've seen cards like that lately, Sandstep, Outcast, that have been really high picks in draft. And with this one, you also get the 3 toughness. So yeah, it's just even a better creature. So that's a great rate. Plus it has the flexibility of you can use the energy for other cards, or you can dump other energy into this. So it's very solid, but if you happen to have a deck that just gets large amounts of energy, then you can make a large flying team to finish the game. It's also a cool combo with Era of Innovation, which lets you pay a mana every time an artifact comes into play to get 2 energy. And so that pays for 2/3 of the cost. When you use the ability, you're going to get another artifact, so you can get 2 more energy. And it doesn't quite let you go infinite, but it's going to let you get more Thopters than is reasonable. At number 3, Restoration Gearsmith. 2 and a white and a black. 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, return target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So a Gravedigger with +1/+1 that also gets artifacts back. And Gravedigger was a top common in any set it was released in, so making it a 3/3 instead means it's going to trade with more cards, so you're more likely to get a 2-for-1 out of it. And if you can get 2 of these and just Gearsmith back your Gearsmith, trade it off, Gearsmith your Gearsmith back, that's going to win a lot of games. At number 2, Cloudblazer. 3 a white and a blue for 2/2 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. So, super powerful card. It's like Muldrifter, but you can't evoke it. It is a gold card, so I don't know about first picking it. Also, with my dislike of blue, I'm definitely valuing blue cards a little lower. But it's just such a great rate. You get an immediate 3-for-1. And your opponent probably kills it if they have the option, because you're blue-white, so if you have a flicker effect, self-bounce, any of those types of cards, and you get to gain 2 more life and draw 2 more cards, you've probably won the game. So it's just an easy 3-for-1 for 5 mana. Really, really amazing card. And number 1, Unlicensed Disintegration. 1 a black and a red, instant, destroy target creature. If you control an artifact, it deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So kill anything, instant speed, 3 mana, already amazing, gets to hit vehicles, and if you control an artifact, deal 3 to the controller. Not that hard to control an artifact. I think a lot of black-red decks will be playing a good amount of artifacts. So yeah, 3 to the face can just kill your opponent with that as well. So this card's going to make for a lot of blowouts, and isn't a better color combination than Cloudblazer, though Cloudblazer might be the overall more powerful card. Now, before we get on with the artifacts, I'd just like to review the colors a little bit for uncommons. So I think it's pretty clear that red, green, and white are very deep and very powerful with their uncommons. I picked the top 4 for each color, but all 3 of those colors have great uncommons in 5, 6, 7. So they're so deep and a lot of first pickable cards. Black is also pretty decent. It's got a good 4. The 5th one is pretty good too. But blue, just so far behind the other colors. And I think the format is definitely going to be distorted with how weak blue is, unfortunately. Okay, so finishing up with artifacts, number 4, Chief of the Foundry. 3 mana for a 2/3 artifact creature. It gives other artifact creatures you control +1/+1. So 2/3 for 3 is definitely below the curve for this particular format, but giving all your other artifact creatures +1/+1 means all your servos, your Thopters, other Chief of the Foundries, other artifact creatures now deal a lot more damage. So you can definitely make some brutal curve outs with this card. And the boosted power makes it easier for you to crew vehicles while also pumping your vehicles as well. At number 3, Filigree Familiar. 3 mana for 2/2 artifact creature. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and when it dies, you draw a card. So it's like Exalted Cultist, except you also gain 2 life when it comes into play, and it's an artifact creature, so there's some synergies there, especially with black, and it's colorless, so it goes in every single deck. At number 2, Ballista Charger. 5 mana for a 6/6 vehicle. When it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and it accrues for 3. So just like a lot of the vehicles in this set, they have inherent protections against servos, because Wizards wouldn't want to print all these amazing huge vehicles in the same set with a bunch of 1/1s that are just going to sit there chumping them. So this one pings a creature or player for 1, meaning you get to kill a servo, and then they have to deal with your 6/6. So it might just take out 2 servos, they chump with 1, or it's going to kill 1 and they have to take 6, or chump with another creature, or trade with it. Or if they don't have any servos, it just deals 7 to your opponent's face. And that's a great deal. You're just crewing 3, so it's not a huge investment. Probably just 1 creature on your side has to tap to attack with this, so it's one of the better vehicles in the set. And at number 1, Beaumont Bazaar Barge. Say that 3 times fast. 4 mana for a 5/5 vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and it crews for 3. So it's a little less powerful than the Ballista Charger, but it costs 1 less mana, and you draw a card when you play it. So even if your opponent removes it, you're not too sad. Drawing the extra card means you're also more likely to draw into creatures to crew it, so not having a crew for it is a little less likely, and it's just a very solid card that's very likely going to get a 2-for-1, and is honestly big enough to finish games. The difference between a 5/5 and an 8/6 is not a big difference. A lot of times they'll all eat the same removal anyway, so you might as well draw a card out of the deal. So that's going to do it for my uncommon review. Make sure to also check out my top 4 commons and top 15 bombs of Kaladesh reviews. I wish you the best of luck with your drafts, and I'll see you next time.